can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks. I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes. Where are all those wonderful suckers?
Gone. There's one there.
From last week?
From last week.
Oh my goodness.
It's still in the wrapping.
Okay.
Hey.
Hi.
Remember when we used to think 40 was old?
I still think 40 is old. That's why I think I'm really old.
I don't see us old.
You don't?
I know we are old. I'm fully aware of that, but I just don't see us as old. I know, I just don't.
This is an odd way to start this podcast.
Well, I mean, you wanted to talk about letting go.
Yes. Now that is the right transition right there. Right. Why be the oldest teenager wearing a goofy t-shirt that I am? You just don't know when to stop.
When do you stop?
Gosh, I guess when it's all over.
It's funny because, and I had this conversation with someone, a listener, Tim from Open Airlock. Tim, if you're listening, hello. He actually brought up a point to me a long time ago. He's like, I know you like Star Wars. I know you like the expanded universe. But when would you want it to end? Because it can't go on forever. It has to end. And that's a good point. It can't go on forever.
I agree.
Eventually, it has to end. And so I gave my answer, and I'll give it again here. The books end on the book, well, chronological-wise, they end on the book Crucible, and then we have a comic book called Legacy that takes place 100-something years later. I would like to fill the gap in between those two. And then, since Legacy didn't get the best of endings, the second run, I'd like to see a better ending to Legacy. The comic book. It doesn't have to be long. I'm not talking like some 50-issue series. No, I want like maybe a 6-part story arc to maybe give it a good send-off. But I do want to see that connection where the books would have tied into the Legacy comic books. And for me, I think I'd be happy. I'd be happy and I'd be like, okay, well, I'd always read more, but if I had to pick an ending, that's where I'd want it. And you brought up the topic because we're sitting here because since someone didn't show up last week, which was supposed to be like tons of conversation, not just you, which you did a great job. Congratulations. But we're also going to have you and Wes kind of Hulk geek out because I'm not the biggest Hulk fan. And I don't know all the comic books.
You mean Bizarro Wes?
Bizarro Wes.
Yes.
Yes. And Bruce. Sorry. Did I say Wes again?
You did.
Now, Bruce to kind of bounce back and forth off the two of you, but it didn't. And that was going to be a 2-part discussion. So it became 1 part because we only got your insight, not Bruce's. And we're not going back, Bruce. We're not going back. But we were sitting here thinking...
Make your bookings, Bruce. What's important to you? Your children or podcasting?
Yeah, you need to get your priorities.
Don't you have a wife?
Yeah, why can't she watch the kids?
Jeez.
Stay in the kitchen where she belongs. Isn't that what you said earlier?
I don't want to buy any rattling pots and pans. Stay off Facebook.
Anyway, there you go. Good advice for anyone. But you were saying when should you let something go?
Correct.
Because earlier tonight we talked about The Walking Dead.
Yes.
You heard a podcast I talked about earlier, and that it went on way too long. It's gone on way too long. Way too long. And it probably should have ended. I don't know what season that was that I talked about, season 6 maybe or whatever.
Right.
Should have wrapped it up and gone. Should have been gone. There's other examples. We talked about the Clone Wars.
Yes.
You felt the same way. There came a time where it was just, I thought the first, I think it's 3 seasons, I think were pretty decent. Not to say they were all golden. There were some stinkers in there, but a lot of them were really good. I remember enjoying it the first couple of seasons.
I think it's a good idea, and I'll use the Mandalorian roundtable for this, when they sat everybody down that had a piece of that storyline, and they all gave a reason on why they like Star Wars and why they were invested in this universe and how they took these creative visions to make one big vision. And I totally agree with that, because I do think that you need multiple eyes on the product, and you need multiple different viewpoints so you attract a bigger audience, so you have more of a legacy product. But the flip side of that is the continuity you need into that. Because I always felt like Clone Wars would be either really enjoyable or it was kind of like a real miss.
Do you remember what was really good? Do you remember the cartoon that came out before that, the Clone Wars cartoon series? Went 2 seasons. Gene Tartakovsky put it together. It was 2008. Oh, no, 2002 or something. It was between the first and second movie these came out. And they were just like little shorts, like 2 minutes of Yoda doing something, a cartoon. He's the guy that did the art. The guy who did the art was Samurai Jack. So it's that kind of style.
Oh yeah, I know the art you're talking about now, but I don't think I saw that.
Watch that. That's on Disney Plus.
Okay.
That's a great series. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It goes 2 seasons. The first season is a bunch of 2-minute vignettes, and they're fantastic. They're fantastic. They don't overstay their welcome. There's no a lot of the stuff in the first season. There's no dialogue. It's all visual, and he tells the story visually, and it's wonderful. Because by the end of it, General Grievous is awesome. He's terrifying. There's a connection between Obi-Wan and Anakin. You feel that they bonded through the Clone Wars so far. And it's... Oh, I'm sorry. This takes place between episode 2 and 3. Excuse me. Episode 2 and 3. So before the third movie came out. And it's really good. In fact, I think it ends as the... Right where the movie picks up. I think Grievous steals the Palpatine. Runs off with him. So it's a really good series and worth your time.
I think what you talked about in these small 2-minute bite-sized episodes. We talked earlier tonight, and we were talking about the latest Spider-Man movie and how it was 150 minutes, but the pacing of it and the way, and I even said, whoever edited the movie, it had such a flow.
It was engaging the whole time.
It just doesn't seem like we know when to edit the good. We try to stretch it so much, and it loses its impact. We've talked about, I know this has been discussed
at length. That happens so many times in movies, though, today.
On like the Marvel series, where you can tell this story in 4 episodes, and you're like, well, can we stretch it to 6? And when you get into that 4th episode where it should have been wrapping up, but you've stretched out this storyline from episode 3, you go, man, this thing sucks.
Winter Soldier Falcon went 6 episodes, should have gone 4. Because they just didn't have
I know that's
story.
the one but it's a lot of stuff like that where is it if you create something? I heard somebody say one time the reason you start a business is to sell it. And I agree with that. Like, so if you have this product or this, when is a good time to go, hey, I've done all I can do, but you almost have to have the end in mind. Like, where do you want this to stop at? And then you build your story. I know that in wrestling many years ago, that's how Vince would book. He would say, here's my WrestleMania. What do we want the main event to be? And now we'll book it backwards 12 months. And I'm not saying you can do everything that way, but there's just certain storylines that seems to me where you have an idea.
Well, you can plan long term, because I think Marvel Phase 1 did that. I think they had a pretty solid outline. They knew where they were going to go.
Right.
And then after that, they just kind of like, we'll wing it. I almost felt they've been winging it ever since. With no, we're going to throw some things in the water, see if people like them, and then go further. And if not, we'll have a plan B.
Well, and I think that, we discussed that, and I said, when you make these movies that make, I know that the MCU is way more of a profitable enterprise than they ever expected it to be, as opposed to what Star Wars is for them is probably way less of a return on investment than Marvel
definitely.
has.
They killed the franchise.
Been.
Yeah.
So,
No, go ahead.
what my point in all of that is they did achieve that, but they're like, okay, well, what do we do next? So where is that creative force, and where do you see that? And I know that they're setting up for Secret Wars, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen.
A TV show.
But the biggest thing for me is we were talking about George selling Star Wars. You mentioned about Jim Henson selling the Muppets. You have these things that become legacy. The brand, so to speak. What is that brand and what does it stand for? And then have so many different people that get involved with it where it becomes so convoluted. Where do you cut that off at?
Right.
And how many times do you restart it? Like we talked about in the Hulk episode. How many Hulk number ones do you go before you go, man, do we just need to shut this thing down?
How many times do you restart Halloween? 3 so far.
You mean the long Halloween?
No, Halloween, the movie series. Michael
Oh,
Myers.
okay.
You
Yeah,
had the
I mean,
original run, then you had the Rob Zombie run, then you had the newest run, and
Right. Yeah.
you know he's going to get reinvented again and come back.
Yeah, I think that there's just such the creative side of what big companies just don't want to let the creator content be. They don't want any misses. They just want hits. They don't want things to develop.
It's playing it safe now.
Yeah, I just feel like that with that you're putting these other big franchises, like where do you
You're devaluing the product when you keep printing stuff out over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We talk about Star Wars now. They're just kind of bankrupt with Star Wars right now.
Right.
We'll talk about Andor. Actually, we're going to talk about Andor, I should mention, on another podcast. Probably bring Benjamin back from Saturday Morning Salmon Flange and kind of do a discussion like we've done before on those. But for right now, without talking about Andor,
right.
do you think they should just stop doing Star? Some people do a pause. Remember, Star Trek took a pause and didn't do anything for like.
Well, Star
7
Wars
years
has
or
done
something.
to me. Star Wars has had 2 pauses from '83 to
99.
yeah. There was a giant pause, and
Movie wise, yeah.
then from Revenge of the Sith until
Last whatever it was that came out.
yeah, whatever. There's been these giant pauses.
The Force is woke.
Yeah. So yeah, the Force is woke. Perfect. So what's interesting in that to me is the first thing that came after that pause was the biggest, and then it was the law of diminishing returns. Every movie after that made less.
Yeah.
And you could say that about Empire and Star Wars to Jedi. I'm not going to argue. the
Jedi made
financial-
more than Empire, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Which I just think that, does it need that, or does it need, is what Star Wars represents gone?
Right.
So, there's the creative input of that was so broad, and they've had some hits in there. Definitely Mandalorian was a major. That first season of Mandalorian will.
You really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I think that it had the right people, and the expectations were so low, and I don't mean Han Solo.
Hey-yo.
Thank you. That it was positioned in a way as a surprise. Rather, now we're almost surprised if it's going to be any good.
You're surprised if it's not like garbage.
Right, if you go, oh, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
And that's not a compliment, but people can say that.
Yeah,
It's not as bad. There's been worse. That's not a compliment.
Yeah, I think it's, and that's what I mean by, like you said, is it a pause, or you just go,
We'll
let's
come right back, or let's just say, look, there's nothing else to do, but we're going to have the Empire and the Rebellion always. We're going to have Jedi and Sith always, and that's all that Star Wars is. And we've kind of run the gamut. Let's put it on the shelf until someone comes up with something unique out there. The books, everyone knows one of my favorite series from the books is the New Jedi Order. Why? Because they did something different. They originally did want Sith to be the villain. George Lucas shot that down. He said, no Sith. Don't use the Sith. They went, oh, man, what can we do? Well, then they got creative. They used aliens from another galaxy. They're intergalactic in a way. Well, because they're from another galaxy, this is what we think at first, the Force has no power over them. They're from a different galaxy where the Force does not exist. Okay? And then now you have a challenge to a Jedi who is not, who is not a Sith, that now they can't feel when this person's going to strike. They can't predict their next move. So they've just got to go on their fast reflexes and skill, hopefully, to fight, and they're going toe to toe with what's called the Vong, the Yuzum Vong, which was a great idea. It was something different, refreshing, and yes, they went dark. A lot of people don't like this, but they went dark. They say, you know what? Everyone's tired of, who gets kidnapped this week, and then they all make it out alive. So let's be real. Let's kill. This is the book that killed Chewbacca, the series that killed Chewbacca in the books. They wanted to kill one of the main characters to bring it off. They wanted it to be Luke Skywalker, excuse me. And George said no. And he offered Han Solo to him, and they said no.
Well,
and
they left that to Disney to kill, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But when George was still involved, he said no to Luke Skywalker, but yes to Han Solo. But anyway, so they killed off Chewbacca just to show this is real. And then they started bringing back some of your characters from the past books and killing them off. And people are like, what, you don't kill off the hero? The hero, no, not now. The hero doesn't always make it out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But guess what happened? Every time we read a book, I'm on the edge of my seat wondering, are they going to kill this person off? Like they say, Wedge Antilles is the pilot and everything. Okay. He's made it through every scrap, and so he's still super lucky. The guy that always, Launchpad McQuack, always walks away from a crash, keeps on clicking. Well, now they had him in a X-Wing, and he's doing an adventure, and he has a feeling that he may not make it. And I'm going, oh, my Lord, they're not going to have him come out this time on top. Did they? Yes, they did. But you know what? The whole time, I was worried. And that's what they wanted. They wanted the reader not to feel safe anymore, because everyone is fair game. And so that was the way to kind of shake the box. It was a different outside one. And then someone I just talked to the other day told me, but after that, it seems like they went back to Sith, and they went back to the new rebellion and stuff like that against the Republic. Now has gotten old and cranky, so now we have a new rebellion against them. Yes, they did kind of rehash some past storylines after that. I do like some of the past storylines they had after that, but it doesn't match up to New Jedi Order, which was just a different aspect.
Well, and I think that's what I was saying with the people that the creative force and all of that, however many people there were. Did they have that, like you said, they presented a plan to kill Luke, but let's kill somebody else. There's some give and take in that interaction. But it sounds like if they present that to George, they had this end in mind that they wanted to get to. And I almost wonder how much, when these major storylines are pitched in TV shows or movies now, is there, or even comics, like is there an end that's going to matter? Or is it all, like you said, we'll just go back in time travel and change everything? Like, I think that's what was so good about that last Spider-Man movie is, they went back and they time changed it, but he paid a price. Yeah, there are consequences. Thank you. There was a real consequence to that. It was not, everything's okay. It was not okay. And going back to that, because they wrote such a good story, and we talked about this before the podcast too, I said I would go see a Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire. Back old Tobey Maguire, and let's see where his characters develop from here on out. Let's see someone who has a happy relationship. The whole Chase and Mary Jane thing, I lost her, we're back in love again. No, make them happily married. Let's have a story like that. Right. Where she supports him and everything goes right. I want to see something different. Let's have an amazing Spider-Man 3, but this time write it well. I thought Andrew Garfield was a great Spider-Man. I just thought his movie sucked. He was great. He's probably still my favorite Spider-Man. Right. I loved how he portrayed Peter Parker, and I liked all the actors. I like who played Gwen Stacy. I can't remember her name. Anyway, I liked her. I thought she was really good, but I thought the story was crap. I thought the villains were awful, done awful. But the thing is, I'd go see Amazing Spider-Man 3 now, just because of this movie. It kind of catapulted, and it said, "Oh, we have something new to show you. We have a new direction to go that you haven't seen before, or that'll interest you. That won't be Spider-Man's origin again," which I'm glad the movies have kind of stopped doing the origin. I agree. I think that the demographic that these shows and movies are going, that have attracted, there's not a lot of new you're going to attract. Right. And if you do, let's use She-Hulk for an example. If that is geared toward, if they said, hey, we're going to gear this toward a female audience, and that person can research and find out on their own how all this happened, rather than give that real
Right.
slapstick way of how she became She-Hulk, and very rushed and very like. They could have made that a story. They could have made the whole episode.
There was
where
no
she was
build-up.
going to die,
Yeah.
and he had this real choice on what do I do.
That's the comic book.
Correct.
That Bruce and I talked about. And that creates a dilemma. And then we have something that they can fight about instead of
There's this
in the very first
sympathetic
episode.
character where I don't know if I can save you because I know what I'm going to pass on to you.
And so there's this moment where it's an inner turmoil and conflict where the Hulk has to make a decision.
Right.
And then later on they can fight over this. Damn you, Bruce, you put this curse on me stuff. That kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Instead, the TV show goes, you know what? I hate you. Why? I don't know, but we have to fight now because the writer said we have to fight. And then they have this fight in the very first episode, which makes no sense. We just need to have we wanted to see Hulk and She-Hulk fight. So put that in somewhere. I don't care how you do it. And everything just
Well,
felt
that's
like,
what I mean. Like if they had 6 episodes, they say we need 8, and what can we do to get to 8? And to me, that is where you're putting a hat on top of a hat, where less is more.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like if you made things less is more, they're going to be more impactful, because you have this, my God, they got so many characters they can pick from. They don't all have to be grand.
So let me ask you this. What franchises should just go away? I'll give you one. Jurassic World. We don't need any more.
It's funny. I was just watched the Netflix documentary on the movies that made us, and it talked about the first Jurassic Park.
It's great.
Just watched that. Yeah.
One of the best movies of our time that we ever saw.
Yeah. And it talked about just everything that went into that, and you forget how much creativity went into that. And like it was like watching documentaries on Star Wars when they were just like, well, we got to figure this out, so we're gonna have to figure it out, rather than like, oh, I know what we can do. We can do what we did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when they still were coming out with fresh ideas.
I think that we have talked a lot about the continental divide of what happened to Star Wars,
Right.
and what do you do with that property. And I know that a lot of people like Andor because it is not digging into what Star Wars was previously.
Right.
And we'll dig into that. And you said your other podcast.
Again, let's dig into that later.
But the characters, to me, is what drives this. And what are these characters? And I think that's what helped with WandaVision was so much is there was no Scarlet Witch in a movie or a TV show that you're just like, oh, well, we got to pull from this because we've got this built-in audience.
True.
They really went with that on their own and really created this
I had no interest
monster
to see,
of a show.
I had no interest to see WandaVision because I didn't care about either one of them because they were
Correct.
so bit players.
Right, but by the end of it, you were like,
This is great. Yeah,
I'm with it.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's not just saying like what is the franchise dead? It's just like, well, what's here that we can really do something with, rather than, well, everybody gets a chance to hit because this is Little League.
Yeah.
I think that
I
there's
agree.
way too much of that, and let your big characters carry it, and sprinkle in your small characters where you can, but your big characters have to draw the money. And if you're going to do smaller characters, like we said with WandaVision, man, give them a really good story like they did, rather than give them a story and say, well, we need 2 extra episodes and stretch it. So I think that's a lot of it. I don't necessarily know if it's the property is dead, or is it, do we have real people that are vested into this, or do we have people that are in the business of show business.
Show business, just making the cash register go cha-ching. That's their
Right.
only job. All right, let me give you another franchise. Ghostbusters. Did you see Afterlife?
I'm not a big Ghostbusters guy, so I'm
so
the
you'd
wrong
be fine with
person
that.
to.
Okay, I'm just asking.
No,
Okay.
I think that they have shown. You know, at the end of the day,
What?
money is what drives all of this.
That's true, but I'm just saying you could let that go. So let me give you another example. I know the answer because we did talk about this before, but Cobra Kai. It's time to end the show. It's time to end Cobra Kai.
Yeah, because I believe that they did something so creatively well that came out of nowhere, and they did it well. And the biggest thing that I liked about Cobra Kai, and this is what I feel like killed a lot of these other shows, there's not all this gigantic breaks in time where you
Yeah.
don't get a new episode for 6 months to a year. And you're like, man, there's been too much come and go since then.
Yeah.
You can't
I've
just
lost
jump.
track of what even happened.
Yeah, you can't jump back into this. That is where they have done so well. And I don't know if that's only because there's not this big budget production or you know, they really have some really good storytellers in place that really know that franchise because they've interweaved everything so well.
And to take the movies number 2, which is okay, it's an okay movie, but 3 is a joke. And usually you'd ignore all those movies and just focus on number 1, like the new Halloween movies did. Only the first movie exists.
Right.
Okay, well, what these guys is, no, we're going to accept them all, even the one that sucks, and we're going to make that one really important. We're going to morph it and say, let's talk about this. Let's wrap it and make it a little bit more serious and include it into our continuity and enhance. That's what Cobra Kai does. It makes it beats the movies, in my opinion, which I never thought it would. We talked about this too, I'm pretty sure. Top Gun?
Well, let's stay on this before we jump around.
Oh,
on
no,
that.
please, go ahead. I didn't know you had
I
anything
just
else
think
to say.
the whole flipping the script from the babyface and heel and seeing Johnny Lawrence as this, you know, such a good bad guy from back in the day, and they turned this character into such a, I mean, sympathetic in a way.
Right.
Like they gave him something and give him credit for running with it, and now you kind of understand why he's the way he is. They fleshed out this character. They revisited a franchise that I feel like that's what we miss in these other major franchises, where they revisit things and they just screw it up.
It's not like 3 years later he's still playing the same bad guy and Daniel's still being the same underdog. No, Daniel's got everything that he doesn't have now.
They've flipped roles.
It's almost like they flip roles now in a way. Daniel's still good, but he's kind of forgotten some of his grassroots. He's forgot his balance, so to speak. And Johnny Lawrence has fallen from grace, and now he's having to look at life from a different point of view.
Right, and you see where, okay, why did those movies matter? Because the actions of losing that karate tournament has made or broke these guys, and you can see the lasting impacts. You go, oh, well, maybe that's why I like this movie so much, because it really was, okay,
Exactly.
it makes sense. It still matters. These characters still matter to me. Like, you don't just, you know, when we talked about The Last Jedi on the podcast many, many years ago, you talked about, for me, watching it was like Ryan Johnson coming out and just setting my Star Wars collection on fire when I was a little boy. And that's how I felt. Like, just he burned all my toys in front of me on Christmas.
And laughed at you.
Yeah, like, what do you think about this? And it was just like, so like, whoa, man, this is you're like messing with me in a very
personal way.
Yeah.
Because this means a lot to me, and you're making fun that it meant a lot
Yeah,
to
you're
me.
minimizing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that's where Cobra Kai achieved and has achieved above and beyond, is because they didn't minimize anything.
That's true.
So,
No, that's true. Yeah. So, all right, folks. So let us know in the comments what franchises need to stop. What do we need to just let go?
Well, not just that. I think it's interesting to hear from fans and say, it's very easy to go, well, this sucks. But how do you tell that story the right way?
Or should it even be told in the first place?
Yeah. Or do you go, well, let's delve into new characters.
Yeah, because if you can't tell the story better, you just want the story to keep going. And then this happened. Okay, well, now it's just getting redundant. But if you can have a different perspective, like Cobra Kai did, run with it. They've plotted this, the outlines out, obviously. Did you hear the guy who played Mike Barnes? They contacted him during season 1, said, hey, look, we got a plan for you, but it's not for a few seasons down the road. You in? He's like, yeah. So
see, I haven't heard that, but that's what I mean. Like, they had an idea, and if everything falls in place, here's where we would like to be. It's like when you go in an interview, and they say, well, what's your 3-year plan, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Like, the people that were behind this product, this franchise, this
told
brand,
you exactly where they saw themselves in 5 years.
I would be like, oh, these guys have got some ammunition.
Yeah.
So bravo to them, because they have done that better than, I can't think of anything in recent memory that touched the nostalgic buttons as well as Cobra Kai did. But I do agree, in the last season, I felt like I can tell like they've told the story.
Well, at this point, everyone who's guest starred could have guest starred, and now we know where all the players are at. There's no more reveals of where this person is. I mean, Benjamin and I obviously made the joke, the next Karate Kid. Hilary Swank has not shown up, and she's technically part of that universe, even though they've never mentioned her, and I hope they never do. But that would be it. Other than that, now we've done all of our where are they nows. In game is where we should be on the next season.
And make the ending matter. I think, like I said, how do you want to end something, and how do you want it to be impactful?
Yeah,
like the ending matters.
You got to have a strong. How many TV shows are just go off the rails and then their ending falls flat?
I think that and I'll point to Sopranos on that. I know a lot of people will point to Game of Thrones, obviously, but Sopranos ended in a way where it ended, you go, man, is that it?
Yeah, see, I'm the only one who liked it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's wrong or right.
But no, most people hated it, and I get, no, that's right. It should be in there. Lost is another one. You're like, are you serious? This is what's Dexter, the original series, not the new
Dexter
one that came out.
Dexter definitely went way too long.
I think the new one figured out the proper ending. They did a bonus season just recently, and that one gave it a proper send-off, I feel. But the first original send-off was bad. It was bad on all accounts. So, yeah, you don't stick the landing. Honestly, there's been a lot of good season finales that have really paid off in the end. A lot of FX shows, The Shield, Rescue Me, Damages, just to name a few. Justified did okay with it. But one series I thought did the best was Star Trek Next Generation. I don't think they should have made movies. They should have just ended on that season finale, and it's perfect.
Well, like I said, I just think that we're at a point where everyone is chasing this nostalgic dollar because they have not grown a new audience. The new audience is not here.
Creatively dead.
Right.
So they have to cash in on the other audience, which is getting older as we are.
Right, which you started the podcast, so I think this is the best.
Do you feel old?
Well.
Do you feel old?
When I stand up and I make my dad noises, yes.
All right. There you go. Folks, we'll see you next time on Princes of the Universe.
Grab my cane.